He was a terrifying beast, trapping her deep in the jungle. She braced for the attack. Instead, the gorilla offered a gentle gesture that defied nature and left her rescuers utterly speechless. For Maya, the world had always been a series of compositions. Back in her small Chicago studio, surrounded by Pantone swatches and the hum of her Mac, she designed sleek logos and minimalist websites. But the images that truly fueled her were the ones flickering on her television late at night, documentaries showcasing the untamed, chaotic, and perfect design of the natural world. For 6 years, every freelance gig, every overtime hour, was a deposit into the Someday Fund. Someday, she would trade the concrete grid of the city for the sprawling, unpredictable canvas of Africa. And now, someday was here. The air in Uganda didn't just feel different, it had a different color palette. The rich, ochre red of the soil, the impossible cyan of the sky, the deep, living greens of the flora, it was a sensory overload that made her graphic designer's heart ache with joy. She had seen giraffes silhouetted against a setting sun, their long necks creating impossible, elegant lines. She had watched a herd of buffalo move like a single, dark river across the savannah. But this was the main event, the windy impenetrable forest. The gorilla trek. They are not monsters, but they command respect, said David, their head guide, his voice a low, serious rumble that cut through the morning mist. He was a man who looked like he'd been carved from the forest itself. A silverback's strength is almost unimaginable. He can snap bamboo stalks as thick as your leg without effort. You stay with me. You do not make sudden movements. You do not make direct eye contact unless he initiates. We are visitors in his home. We follow his rules. The other tourists nodded, their faces a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Maya felt it too, but her excitement was winning. She sketched the image in her mind, a magnificent silverback, a creature of raw power and ancient wisdom, a masterpiece of evolution. She saw him not as a threat, but as the ultimate work of art she had traveled halfway across the world to witness. She gripped her camera, her knuckles white with anticipation, completely unaware that she was about to get a much closer look than she had ever dreamed of. The trek began. The word, impenetrable, was an understatement. The air was thick and heavy, a humid blanket scented with damp earth, sweet decay, and the perfume of 1,000 unknown blossoms. Light struggled to pierce the dense canopy, dappling the forest floor in shifting patterns of shadow and gold. It was everything Maya had imagined, a chaotic, overwhelming, and breathtakingly beautiful world. Her artist's mind was in overdrive, trying to catalog the textures of moss on ancient trees, the iridescent flash of a butterfly's wing, the sheer verticality of their surroundings. An hour into the grueling hike, a sharp, urgent pressure began to build in her lower abdomen. It was a simple, undeniable human need, but in this alien environment, it felt like a critical system failure. She tried to ignore it, focusing on David's back and the rhythmic slash of his machete clearing the path. But the feeling only intensified, twisting into a cramp that made her gasp. She knew the rules. Stay with the group. No exceptions. But the thought of asking David to halt the entire expedition for such a personal reason filled her with a hot wave of embarrassment. She glanced around. The foliage was so dense. Surely, she could just step off the path for 30 seconds. Find a private spot. No one would even notice she was gone. It was a foolish, impulsive decision, born of discomfort and a city dweller's underestimation of true wilderness. Driven by a designer's instinct for a clean, orderly solution, she looked for the perfect spot, a small clearing, a particularly large tree that would offer total privacy. She spotted what looked like an ideal alcove of ferns just a dozen feet away. "I'll be right back," she whispered to the woman behind her, who merely nodded, her focus on her own footing. Maya slipped into the green wall of the jungle. The sounds of the group faded almost instantly, swallowed by the sheer density of the vegetation. She found her relief, and as she stood up, a disorienting silence pressed in on her. She turned back to where she thought the path was, but saw only an identical wall of green. And then another. A prickle of unease ran down her spine. It had only been a minute, but in the heart of the Bwindi, a minute was long enough to get lost. Panic, cold and sharp, began to seep into Maya's veins. "Okay, Maya, don't freak out," she muttered, her voice sounding small and foreign. "They can't be far." She called out, "David? Guys?" Her voice was absorbed by the leaves, leaving no echo. Only the hum of insects and the distant call of a bird answered. Every direction looked the same, a beautiful, terrifying labyrinth of green and brown. The beauty she had been admiring moments before now felt menacing, claustrophobic. That's when she heard it. It wasn't the gentle snap of a twig. It was a deep, resonant crack, like a giant snapping a massive bone. It was close. Too close. Maya froze, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She held her breath, straining her ears. Heavy, shuffling footsteps followed, displacing foliage with an unnerving ease. Something immense was moving through the undergrowth, and it was heading her way. A primal smell hit her next, a pungent, musky odor mixed with the scent of wet earth. Her mind screamed, "Run!" But her feet were rooted to the spot. Slowly, a section of the jungle in front of her seemed to part. A form emerged from the shadows, a creature of impossible scale and power. It was a silverback gorilla. His sheer mass was breathtaking, a mountain of black fur and muscle. The eponymous silver hair cascaded down his broad back, shimmering like a cape in the dappled light. But it was his eyes that captured her, dark, intelligent, and fixed directly on her. They held no curiosity, only a cold, territorial warning. He stood to his full height, and Maya had to crane her neck back. Then, he let out a roar. It wasn't a sound, it was a physical force that ripped through the air, vibrating in Maya's bones and rattling her teeth. He followed it with a terrifying display, beating his cupped hands against his massive chest. The sound was not a thump, but a deep, hollow boom boom boom, the bass drum of a nightmare. He charged forward a few steps and stopped, shaking the very ground. The world dissolved into a tunnel of pure, unadulterated terror. This was not the masterpiece she wanted to see. This was death. Maya's mind was a static-filled television, every rational thought vaporized. Run. Climb. Scream. Hide. The commands were useless, her body paralyzed by a fear so profound it felt like a physical weight. Then, through the white noise of her panic, a single, grainy image surfaced, a memory from some late-night survival show. A man in khaki shorts shouting at the camera, "Whatever you do, don't run from a silverback. You make yourself small. You play dead." It was a desperate, flimsy straw, but it was all she had. With a choked sob, Maya's legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the damp earth, curling into a tight fetal position. She squeezed her eyes shut, pressing her face into the cool, damp leaves. Play dead. Play dead. Don't move. Don't breathe. She could hear him approaching. Each footstep was a heavy, deliberate thud that seemed to shake her entire body. The musky scent intensified until it was all-consuming. A massive shadow fell over her, blocking out the slivers of jungle light. This was it. She braced for the crushing impact, the tearing claws, the end. But it didn't come. Instead, she felt a touch. It was not violent. It was surprisingly gentle. A huge, leathery finger, calloused and rough like ancient bark, prodded her shoulder. It was a touch of investigation, not aggression. Maya fought every instinct, forcing her body to remain limp, her breathing shallow and even. The finger prodded her again, then traced the line of her spine. What happened next shattered her understanding of reality. She felt two enormous hands slide carefully under her body, one supporting her back, the other under her knees. And then, with an effort that seemed as trivial as lifting a doll, the gorilla lifted her from the ground. Maya's world tilted. She was cradled in the arms of the beast that was supposed to kill her. she dared to crack open an eyelid. Her face was inches from his broad, muscular chest. She could see the intricate whorls of his black fur, smell the rain and vegetation clinging to him. He held her not with rage, but with a steady, secure strength. He began to walk, carrying her through the thick undergrowth as if she weighed nothing. Branches that would have blocked her path parted before him. He moved with a rhythmic, swaying grace, his massive form navigating the jungle with an innate knowledge she could never possess. The journey felt like an eternity and a second all at once. Fear was still there, a cold stone in her stomach, but it was now wrapped in a thick blanket of utter bewilderment. He finally stopped in a small, secluded clearing she never would have found. A tiny waterfall trickled down a moss-covered rock wall into a clear pool. The air was cool and filled with the gentle sound of water. With the same impossible care he had used to lift her, he knelt and placed her on a soft patch of moss on the ground. He didn't toss her or drop her. He laid her down as if she were made of the most fragile glass. Then, he backed away a few feet, sat down, and simply watched her, his dark eyes filled with an expression she could not begin to decipher. For a long time, neither of them moved. The roaring monster was gone, replaced by a silent, patient observer. The terror in Maya's chest slowly began to recede, replaced by a wave of profound, surreal wonder. Her artist's eye, dormant during the panic, flickered back to life. She wasn't just looking at an animal, she was studying a subject. She saw the deep lines etched around his eyes, the subtle silvering of fur around his powerful jaw, the topography of a long, white scar that ran down his left forearm. She saw a life lived, a story written in his very being. Slowly, cautiously, she pushed herself into a sitting position. The gorilla watched her every move but made no sound, no threatening gesture. His gaze was intense, but it felt more like curiosity now, not malice. Remembering the survival show mantra, telegraph your moves, no surprises, she decided to do something. With painstaking slowness, she reached for the backpack still slung over her shoulder. The gorilla's eyes followed her hand. She slid the pack off and placed it in front of her, unzipping the main compartment with loud, deliberate zips. Her hand found a foil-wrapped granola bar. She held it up, showing it to him, then slowly unwrapped it. She broke off a small piece and put it in her own mouth, chewing theatrically. He tilted his head, a gesture of profound intelligence. She broke off another piece and, with a trembling hand, extended it toward him on her open palm. He watched her for a long moment, then leaned forward. His huge, leathery lips, surprisingly soft, gently plucked the piece of granola from her hand. He chewed it, his eyes never leaving hers. Emboldened, Maya reached into her pack again and pulled out an apple. She held it up, then took a loud, crunchy bite herself. She placed the apple on the ground between them. He ambled forward, picked it up, sniffed it with a wrinkled nose, and then took a bite, mimicking her action perfectly. They sat there, sharing a simple meal in a hidden clearing, a human and a gorilla communicating in a universal language of gesture and trust. The fear was gone completely, replaced by a connection so powerful and strange it brought tears to Maya's eyes. She briefly fumbled for her phone, a last flicker of instinct to contact her world. She saw one bar of signal, then zero. It was useless. And in a strange way, she was relieved. This moment belonged only to them. After the apple was gone, a comfortable quiet settled between them. The immediate danger had passed, but Maya knew she couldn't stay here forever. As if sensing her thoughts, the gorilla stood up. He looked at her, then at his own broad back, and then patted it with one of his massive hands. The gesture was unmistakable. He wanted her to climb on. Hesitation warred with a newfound, absolute trust. She chose trust. She stood, and he knelt slightly to make it easier. With her heart pounding with a new kind of excitement, she climbed onto his back, wrapping her arms loosely around his powerful shoulders. He rose to his full height with ease and began to walk, retracing a path through the jungle that was clear only to him. Maya clung to him, her cheek pressed against the coarse fur of his back. She was seeing the jungle from a completely new perspective, moving through it not as an intruder, but as a privileged passenger. It was the most surreal and magnificent ride of her life. Suddenly, voices cut through the air. Maya! Maya, can you hear us? It was David. The gorilla stopped, turning his head toward the sound. A moment later, 3 figures burst through the foliage, David, followed by 2 armed park rangers. They all froze mid-stride, their mouths falling open in unison. The sight that greeted them was something no training manual could ever prepare them for. It was not a violent scene of a wild animal attacking a tourist. It was a tableau of impossible peace, the lost woman, alive and unharmed, perched on the back of the very beast they feared had killed her. As they stared, a drop of rain fell from the canopy above, and the gorilla, without a moment's hesitation, reached up with a giant leaf to shield her head. David slowly lowered his rifle, his face a mask of utter disbelief. Maya, stay calm, he breathed, though his advice was clearly for his own men. Maya slid carefully from the gorilla's back and stood on her own 2 feet. It's okay, she said, her voice steady. He's not a threat. He helped me. She turned to her protector. There were no words, but none were needed. He looked down at her, and in a final, stunning act of communication, he leaned in and gently pressed his massive, wrinkled forehead against hers. It was not a kiss, but a gesture of profound, silent acknowledgement, a goodbye. He gave one last look at her, then at the stunned men, and with a quiet turn, he melted back into the wall of green and was gone. The walk back to camp was silent. David and the rangers kept glancing at Maya as if she were an apparition, their minds struggling to process what they had witnessed. When they finally returned, the news spread through the camp not like a wildfire, but like a slow, creeping wave of awe. Maya didn't have to tell her story, the transformed faces of the guides told it for her. By evening, she was a legend. Every tourist, every staff member, wanted to hear it directly from her. She sat by the campfire, losing count of the times she recounted the tale, from the terrifying roar to the shared apple to the final, gentle press of his forehead. She had come to Africa seeking to witness the art of nature. She left with a story that transcended it. The experience had not just been an adventure, it had been a revelation. It had reshaped her understanding of communication, of strength, and of the fine line between wildness and wisdom. Back in her studio in Chicago, the logos and websites would seem a little flatter, the colors a little duller. She knew that the most incredible design she would ever encounter was not one she could create on a screen, but one she had been privileged enough to meet, deep in the heart of an impenetrable jungle. The memory was now her life's masterpiece. What would you have done in Maya's place? Could you have trusted a creature of such immense power? Tell us your thoughts in the comments, and show your respect for the incredible intelligence of these animals. If this story touched your heart, please like and share it so more people can witness this amazing bond. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that show the world is full of wonders.